for sharing experiences, getting the knowledge ahead of time as well, so you can have a good experience. So we did that. So it was kind of like we're river butters. That's kind of a cool thing. So, and he went on to do a lot of cool things. And one of the coolest things he did is he went ahead and as a fundraiser for his group, which he'll explain to you, he actually kayaks from Lake Mead all the way to Mexico. So he is nuts.
In one trip?
Yeah, in one trip, yeah. So he'll tell you all about how many days and stuff. But it was a really cool experience. I got to share a couple days with him on it, but of course work gets in the way and I couldn't do the whole thing, but one of these days. So but this is James.
Okay, there we go. Gotta get used to this. I'm used to my booming voice filling a room right there, but I'm gonna try to go with the mic here and try to. I'm not gonna get a headset piece and have like a cardboard microphone coming down. But one thing is a quick note to add to what Terry said. Where's Helen?
She's over here.
Okay, I was about to say that there's one more thing to play, which I'll do a couple times with Helen. Helen introduced Terry and I on Facebook to compare notes with the calendar. So tonight, it's really interesting how I actually got asked to be the guest speaker this evening. Day 3 of the expedition, we're sitting in a cove in northern Lake Mojave. It's Helen, Howard, myself, and Terry. And Helen looks at Terry and says, "Hey, you should have James talk about his river trip at Paddlefest in April." And Terry goes, "I like that idea. That was really good." And my response was, "I'm barely 30 miles into this trip, and we don't know if I'm going to make it to Mexico or not." And both Helen and Terry look at me and go, "Oh, you'll make it to Mexico." As luck would have it, Lord willing, I didn't make liars out of them or break their day. So on about the expedition. The original reason I wanted to do the expedition is that I have a dream eventually of kayaking the River Passage to Alaska. And I was thinking I needed a long trip under my belt. I needed an expedition. So the choice of where to go seemed obvious, the Colorado River. How far? As far as it'll take me. This is a trip that involves paddling through 3 wildlife refuges, 2 giant lakes being Lake Havasu and Lake Mojave, going through areas of multiple jurisdictions of ownership of public, private, and tribal land, all with limited camping and public access. It also involves portaging, as we all know, and I'm going to introduce this right here. Every time I hold up my paddle, everybody yell, "Damn." This involves portaging 6.
Damn.
Thank you. And
Damn.
yeah. Bam right here. But portaging those, and the total trip length was 340 miles that took me through 3 states and into 2 countries. The first part of the expedition, Hoover Dam to Davis Dam, a distance of 64 miles. I launched from Hoover Dam on November 13th. I was joined by my friends Rick Beach and Jeff White. Jeff, where you at? Raise your hand. Where you at, Jeff? Not here yet. Jeff, I'm giving the presentation now. But I was joined by Jeff and my mom, Vicki, and they went with me for the first day and a half, 12 miles down to Willow Beach, which is where the river kind of does a little arc down there from Hoover Dam. And from Hoover Dam down to Davis Dam, I was joined by Helen. And on day 3, Monday morning, Terry joined us just a few miles south of Willow Beach, a place called Burrow Wash. And from there, the plan was to go down the 52 miles down to Davis. When we originally launched, as much as my original plan is I wanted to start putting miles behind me, there's one thing you absolutely do not rush, is Upper Black Canyon. We all know it.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the hot springs or the waterfalls, but Lower Black Canyon is also spectacular nonetheless. Black Canyon into the more open waters of Lake Mojave, the scenery remains spectacular. As long as your finger isn't over the camera lens, I think it's impossible to take a picture that can't be featured on a postcard. Now, one thing Lake Mojave is well known for is the wind and the waves. And right here we had about a 25-mile-an-hour tailwind. Luckily, the north was pushing us along. And at times the waves actually got about 3 feet, they averaged 3 feet and 11 feet apart. At times they got 4 feet tall. And when I would shoot a truck out, going south. I'm talking, I interrupted myself right there. But there were times where the waves, where I would shoot out in front of Helen and Terry, and they would see my head, and just my head between the waves. And if you've ever been through the narrows of Lake Mojave where it's really getting interesting, you know that sucker could be a roller coaster. Just a few miles north of Cottonwood Cove, we took a break, and Helen announced that the waves and the wind were kind of creating hell with their wrists. And when she announced that, you can see the upper picture on the left. That's Terry, and I took the picture, and I had pretty much the same look on my face after she said that. We didn't like it. The team was breaking up. But it's really important. We've all heard it. Know your limits. And the fallout from that is you're healthy enough and good to paddle another day. And that's real important. So we reached Cottonwood Cove. Helen made arrangements with one of her drivers to come over and pick her up. But one thing we did enjoy was the amenities of Cottonwood Cove. By this day, it was like day 3 for Terry, day 5 for me on the river. And for you Grand Canyon voters out there, you know that a hamburger tastes better in Pierce Ferry than Leeds Ferry. And we're over there, Terry and I actually each bought a case of White Castles, each. And we're just eating those things as quick as we can zap them on the microwave going, oh, it's good! When we finished, we introduced to Helen, and we headed out. And 2 more rollers of Lake Mojave. This is the wide part of Lake Mojave. In this next clip, you'll actually see we thought we had the lake to ourselves. We saw one of the coolest things I would see on this entire trip. Hey!
Oh, wow. Oh, cut.
Oh, wait for it, wait for it.
Yeah, we're good, man. We're saying howdy. We're just saying hi. This is not the type of company we thought we'd see today.
Kite surfer. Kite surfer, man.
That is cool.
Kite surfing.
I know, that was amazing. Pop one elbow down and look at you like this.
We're still talking about that. That guy was pretty cool. Just the way he dead stopped. We made it down about 5 miles south of Cottonwood Cove, and I had to include this picture. Usually I don't include pictures just for camp stuff. We want to see the cool stuff. Opinions vary, but I want to include this because Terry kept on commenting how the day that we would reach Davis Dam, there would be 50-mile-an-hour winds. And that night it was Terry's turn to cook dinner. And he says tomorrow's going to be 50-mile-an-hour winds. Terry, you have a good chili, but luckily it wasn't powerful enough to create 50-mile-an-hour winds. If you look at the picture upper left, we launched every day. We launched before sunrise because you get going before those afternoon winds kick up. One of my absolute favorite times to paddle is at sunrise. I was out on the water at 5:30 this morning shooting pictures because it's one I cannot imagine a greater way to start the day. And you are just witness to God's tapestry. And it's just wonderful. And this is one of the most spectacular sunrises we saw on the entire trip, or I saw on the entire trip. From there, we shot it down 16 miles to Davis Dam. And right there, you can see Terry paddling along through the narrow part of lower Lake Mojave. Davis Dam right there, bottom right. Upper left is close up to Davis Dam. You can actually paddle right up to that sucker. But you don't want to really have your boat touch it, or you touch it because it is just caked in quagga mussels. We didn't want to carry a mussel. From there, we paddled 2 miles north, met Helen over at Catherine's Landing, and from there, a bit adieu to Terry, and started the next part of the expedition. The next part of the expedition is from Davis Dam to Parker Dam, a distance of about, roundish, about 86 miles. This would begin the horse race, a portion of the expedition. You can see where I'm launching right there. I started off, Kevin dropping off the base of Davis Dam, and packed the kayak, took off. Now, to put in perspective here, that first day, it was just me and the river. This time I would be solo for the next 276 miles. The first 5 days of the expedition, we did 64 miles. My plan that day was to launch from Davis and paddle down through Laughlin, Fort Mojave, Needles, all the way down to Park Mojave, a distance of 43 miles the first day of the expedition. This would actually be the longest day mileage-wise of the trip. And they're covered right there in Needles, so I'm going to go to advance a little bit because this carries a little more than I like. But I'm going to leave one part because I love that shot. Yes, I was where every day I had a GoPro attached to my head. When you get down to Park Mojave, they're going to give you a parking pass until you can put it on your vehicle. And me being like a good law-abiding kayaker, I did just that up there to the upper left. Let me tell you, kayaks, very low mileage, and I earned a whole lot of carbon offsets on this trip. So the plan the next day was to paddle down through Topak Gorge into Lake Havasu. I went through Topak Gorge on a Friday. I left, of course, before sunrise. And Topak, how many of you have been through Topak? Raise your hand. So a lot of you know. It's amazing. And the day I went through there, and even when I talk about it, and I'm going to explain now, I'm probably going to get a little look left here just to set a left turn, because there's parts that are real emotional to me even now. As much as I've watched the videos and put stuff together, it still affects me. Topak, this is what Topak was like.
This would be powerboat number 9. As the powerboats are getting bigger and the lakes are getting bigger, I am definitely getting closer to the main part of Havasu.
Paddling through Topak Gorge that morning, the only other person I saw was one fisherman at the top of the gorge. That's it. The rest of the time, it was absolutely still. The water was glass, and it was quiet. In a short description, it was church. Havasu, on the other hand, was metropolis. The dynamics between those two areas was like visiting one of the greatest of God's cathedrals and then stepping through a magical door directly into traffic in Times Square. Even now, the dynamics between Topak and Havasu really left me in a very reflective mood that evening. I ended up paddling about 26 miles through Topak down to a boating camp about 5 miles below below Havasu City. And if you look at the picture on the lower right, or excuse me, lower left, I had to do the tourist thing and take a selfie in front of London Bridge. You can see my boating campsite, the other 3 pictures. The day left me in a very reflective mood, and I actually posted the following to Facebook that evening. again, why I like paddling at
Good
sunrise.
morning to you, good morning to you. We're all in our places with bright shining faces. Something else I can't remember the words to. Good morning to you.
Hello to my good old buddy, the wind. By mid-morning, I was met by about a 30 to 35 mile an hour headwind. And you can see the boat pretty hopping. At times, it was burying the front third of the kayak. And it'd be past the front hatch, and I've got a 17-foot kayak. I decided to seek shelter and kind of weigh my options. So I paddled over to Cattail Cove, and from that red circle right there, Cattail Cove in that video was directly at my 12 o'clock, directly in front of the kayak. It took me an hour and a half to paddle just over a mile and 1.4 miles to Cattail Cove from that red circle. It was a lot of headwind. Matter of fact, I made it when it was about a quarter mile from Cattail Cove. I decided to take a short break because this little teeny island was basically just a pile of rocks sticking out of the lake. And I looked and I could see Parker. Thank you. Okay, I can wake you up. See Parker Dam just 2 miles away. Now, mind you, that day there was a fishing tournament going on, and there were powerboats that lifted up and down the lake. I almost got hit twice that morning. Powerboats are going to be a recurring theme. And the waves going over there, and I was sitting down and I got my scope out and I'm looking Parker down, I'm surveying the water, and I'm just like, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to do it. Started paddling. I made it maybe 6 feet from the island when the strongest gust of wind that day literally pushed me back onto the island. And let's just say, message received. I wasn't meant to meet my goal that day. I have, especially that 2 weeks, I have one of the world's busiest guardian angels, and guardian angel wanted a break. It says, dude. So, I wanted to make it that day. My little brother eventually picked me up over at Cattail Cove, spent the night at his house, and the plan was, and we're going to a Sunday now, this is the Sunday before Thanksgiving. The plan was to drop me off at the base of Parker Dam and go down the Parker Strip from there. Now, just launching at Parker Dam is a cool story in and of itself.
Over to Parker Dam to go launch down a cliff, and we're driving along. Wind south of us is blasting at probably 25 to 30 miles an hour, so it's pretty calm through here. But the further south I go today along the Parker Strip, the funner it's going to get. And it is Sunday, November something. I'm standing toward the base of Parker Dam. There's not apocalypse. Little brother Yo there. I'm kind enough to take a bareback kayak brother is and move him around the dam. Trailer we brought slaughter on. There's Parker Dam. And we get to go down back to get the kayak down there, a little bit ahead of us. We're jump right over the gates here. But we get on over the kayak down this ravine system. This is the launch site we find closest to the dam. Blows. You good? I'm gonna take that look. It's got a timber tree branch right here. All right. Okay. Bring it out and swing it around. Great side right here. Parker Dam. Third dam on the river. 4 to go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to go. And I'm going down the Parker Strip.
Make a quick note, I like to name my boats after bad sci-fi movies. I've got one kayak named Sharktopus, and my kayak I call Slaughterpocalypse. That's what I meant when I was pointing their Slaughterpocalypse. Parker Strip is what you imagine it to be, a conglomeration of power boats and jet skis. And I launched, a little after sunrise on Sunday morning, and by the time, about 8 in the morning, I'm still coming across parties going alongside the river. And that day specifically, we also had 35-mile-an-hour wind coming out of the west. My old buddy, the wind. It was a wild ride. It was fun, but it was like riding Mr. Toad's Wild Ride at Disneyland. But still very cool. It knocked out the 10, 11 miles of Parker Strip, and next came the next section of the expedition. Headgate Rock Dam to Palo Verde Conversion Dam to Imperial Dam. This is the longest section, self-supported section of the expedition. It's about 44 miles down to Palo Verde Dam, and all the way down from Headgate Rock to Imperial Dam is a distance of 126 miles. I wanted to include these pictures that my little brother took of me launching at a little bit below Headgate Rock Dam, because he took some really awesome pictures. That opening slide you saw with the little sparkle waters was actually me going down Parker Strip that he took, and it just makes me look really cool, so I included some of them. Launched down Headgate Rock, and this next 44 miles of river was actually my absolute favorite. The scenery stunk, but the river is pretty active. November's a low water month on the Colorado River, and that created areas of almost class 2 rapids. There was a lot of strainers, chutes, my buddy the wind, and I actually had the most difficult section of water I had was about 28, 29 miles into the trip, and it's a little section I call the Crucible.
Crazy. The river's turned due west. The wind's coming at me like crazy. We go again. So steep and close. Wow. This is insane. And today I'm going to make things crucible. There's so much to take in. Just remember, there's things that happened to me 4 days ago. And it's still sinking in. Until we trip, it's been sinking in for years. Sure as hell, at this point, is not my last river trip on this river. I'm going to do quite the endurance I've done. What the future holds, all I know is right now, the time I need to treasure with this baby. As much as she's punishing me.
The Crucible was, it took there's about 10 minutes of video of that, and I edited it down to 1 minute, but there were some ways I was able to caught on the GoPro, because I went over there and I was thinking, hey, this is all heavy surf, I gotta get this thing going, I gotta start it up one. I wish I got that last part, but it was only about a quarter-mile section of the river, maybe half-mile. Quick math here, half-mile. And the headwind was just incredible, the waves were coming through there. The GoPro has a fisheye lens, so it's not able to capture quite the depth, the height of the waves. A lot of you probably mess with that and kind of aware of that do photography. By the time, there was so much wind and weather that day, and the river itself and the conditions, that I wasn't going to make my campsite. My campsite was, I planned to paddle 34 miles down that day, and I was racing the wind. And you can see, I was racing the sun, and you can see right here, it was already getting pretty dark. So I didn't know what was ahead of me. I didn't want to paddle at night. I didn't know that section was my first time on it. So I decided, you know what, I gotta call this. And I'm gonna stop at the first place I think is kind of doable. Thus became what I call the night on the sandbar. I found a sandbar, and went, there it is, there's home for the night. And I know that the river can go up quite a bit at night and then back down in the morning. I didn't know how much the sandbar would be there at the night, how much the water would come up, but you gotta do what you gotta do. So I start unpacking the kayak, get my tent out, and I see a bunch of stuff floating in water in the stern hatch. Turns out my 10-liter dromedary had busted open. That's a water bag. And I'm like, uh-oh, because I left park with about 5 gallons of water. The thing was completely drained out. And I had some of my laundry, the clothes I needed to dry that had stuck in the stern hatch, not in the dry bag. Whoops. And it was just soaking. So I had only about 1.25 gallons of water, and there were busted wells at the campsite south of me, so my chances of getting stocked on water were real great. And my absolute last resort was going to be filtered river water, because there's a lot of farm runoff through there. And there's a lot of hard water. That was last resort. It wasn't really an option. I wanted to exercise, so I had to. When I took out the sandbar, I took my clothes, laid my clothes out best I could. Come to find this would be the coldest night of the expedition. It got down to about 28 degrees. Yeah. So I set up 3 tent stakes from the edge of the river up to my tent, and the plan was to wake up every 2 hours and shine a flashlight up, see my shiny tech stakes, and use that as a gauge how much the river come up. If the water level come up to the second stake, I better start packing my kayak because there may not be a sandbar left in a short while. That was the plan. Went to bed, and this is what happened from there. It's 2:30 in the morning. I woke up about 1. And I set my alarm. The water has risen significantly. This could be considered a low point of the trip, but I took a lot longer packing the kayak than I should have, because I packed and then stopped for a while and just looked, because I don't have a camera good enough to catch the scene, but I can just describe it as that the wind is still, it's cold, but the wind is still, the river is calm, the waters are calm, big difference from yesterday. And I'm looking at the full reflection of Orion on the water. Absolutely gorgeous night. I don't see it as a low point, I just see it as just another curveball, you just roll with it. It's just bound to happen. Loving it. Loving this. I guess Monday blues is Monday fun. It's cold. It's 83 degrees. The sun's coming up. Not soon enough. And here I found in my campsite a stupid dirtbag kayaker with a little fire going in a tin can. This is what you look like when you got a kind of a beat down the day before. Your previous night's sleep consisted of 2 2-hour naps, and then paddling down 10 miles and portaging Paddlefest diversion dam.
Oh, yeah.
So I woke up. I had to let my clothes defrost in the sun, so I got a much later start than I wanted that day. And if I tried to put on my water clothes, the neoprene, I would have cracked because it was frozen stick. Temperature below freezing. When everything got warmed up, repacked the kayak, headed down the 10 miles to Paddlefest diversion dam, and then Paddlefest diversion dam is a story thing of itself. Ladies and gentlemen, notice the tone of my voice. The third time I've had it, fourth time I've had it, essentially taking everything and throwing it up here and emptying the kayak. Palo Verde. Love that. Some of you are asking about the presentation about the dams. I said I've got a whole section dedicated to Palo Verde. That's why. When I was carrying my stuff around the dam, this involves about a 1,600-foot portage and dragging the kayak through sand dunes and whatnot. I got a text from Helen. Helen, you here yet? Okay, well, she'll hear her name again. I got a text from Helen that says, "Hey, I'm in the area. Do you need anything?" I'm going, text it back. A couple gallons of water. She goes, "Okay, I'll meet you at Mayflower and have a couple gallons of water." And I just went like this. I went, "Thank God for Helen Howard!" And it just tells you. Okay, we got it. That just tells you can go from the lows of lows and boing to the highs of highs. I paddled down the 8 miles down to Mayflower County Park, and met Helen there, got a couple gallons of water. Thank you. And I kind of pulled a muscle when I was carrying the kayak over the dam, and it wasn't hurting me a bunch, but at times it was just saying hello. So I remember thinking when I was going down Mayflower, I'd love to find a masseuse. What are the chances of that? The people camped next to me in Mayflower. Wonderful people. They're from India. I'm from India. We do some of the same people. We hit it off. We have to go out and talk and do. And one of the people there is a physical sports therapist for the polo players back in India.
Wow.
And we're talking, and she goes, "I love what you're doing. I'm gonna work on you a bit." And so, this is Wednesday morning, the day before Thanksgiving. I get an hour and 15 minutes of massage right next to the boat launch. And I'm going, that's what happened. It's like, wow. That's just another proof that the good Lord watches out for the idiots. Right? That's proof. It was amazing. So, the lows of lows, highs of highs. So the plan was from there was to paddle down and spend the night on the Arizona side at some BLM boating campsites. But being on the cusp of Thanksgiving weekend, there was a constant hum of sand rails, quads, dirt bikes, all the way down from about Blythe, 40 miles south, all the way to about Cipolla Wildlife Refuge. And you can't camp at the Wildlife Refuge. This is a couple of pictures I took along the Arizona side. And I decided not to stay at the boating campsites because I don't want to take a chance of being run over by one of those guys. And they're going in all night too. At one point, they're shooting fireworks at. It's Arizona, so I stayed at the feed campsites. I stayed over at McIntyre County Park. I paddled down to Walters Camp. Now, Walters Camp, kind of like Park Milwaukee, they're going to give you a parking pass to put on your vehicle. Me being a good law-abiding kayaker, I did that again. Now, I got there Thanksgiving Eve. I paddled down about 27 miles from McIntyre Park. The plan the next day was to go through Imperial Wildlife Refuge and the Cacho State Recreation Area. That stretch of river, it's about 34 miles. It's one of my absolute favorite stretches of the Colorado River because it is the longest remaining stretch of lower Colorado River left. And it's an absolutely beautiful area. It's not a black canyon. It's got a whole other body. We've got a lot of backwater lakes and whatnot. But before I could get going that day, I was met by my old buddy that I had coming pretty much down from Headgate Rock all the way down with my good old buddy, the Sandbars.
The sandbar stretches down near the width of the river. And I'm having to walk my boat across it. It's like walking a puppy dog who refuses to let its owner ride it. Come on. Come on. Ah, sure. I hate you, sandbar that stretches the width of the river almost. I am just barely able to float. I just gotta make it over here to the extreme Arizona side. Deeper water! Deeper water! Yay! On to Cacho! And Mexico!
Wilson, don't get away. No, don't go away, Wilson. I need you to drink from. You believe it. That's the entrance and exit to Taylor Lake Boating Camp. The further south I got of Imperial Wildlife Refuge, the more power boats there were that day. This is Friday, Thanksgiving weekend. Most were cool. They gave me kind of a light berth or slow down a little bit. You know, we're all sharing the river. Others, there were a few others that, very few, but enough, that decided to play Let's Screw with the kayak. My plan that day was to paddle down to Ferguson Lake and stay at one of the 3 available campsites. When I started to go down to Ferguson Lake, it's right where the river goes from south and does a hard turn to the east. And right there at the corner is the Mr. Ferguson Lake. When I was about half a mile from that turn, I had a powerboater and 2 jet skis decided to play that game of screw with the kayak. I had one jet skier doing circles in front of me, one doing circles behind me to create chopping waves to send my way. It's not something a lot of us have our stories. My attitude at the time was not frustration. I was not mad. I was just sick. At that point, I hated anything with an engine designed to go fast on water or land, with the exception of light passenger vehicles depending on the moving around. Yeah. Thank you. When they finally stopped, I made the turn to Ferguson. I just paddled on, let them do their thing, just paddled on.
Johnny.
When I made the turn into Ferguson Lake, the powerboat came in, throttle open, came into the lake, did a somewhat wide circle around me, and then went out. It's just one more slap in the face. From pretty much, you know, ever since I reached about the light, civilization come knocking wherever I went. I just was looking for one more quiet line on the road, just me and the river. I went down to Ferguson Lake, tried to look for campsites. The places that I found, there were a lot of people camping there. Some of the campsites I looked at, with every kind of room, the people looked like the extras from Hills Have Eyes. And other sites, there was some room, and I started talking to a couple people. They're like, "All right, dude, yeah, you can stay with us. Want some weed?" Needless to say, I am from the generation of Nancy Reagan just saying no. So Ferguson Lake was not going to work. Went down to Lake Martinez, paddled over there. By this time the sun's setting. Went over to Lake Martinez, down about a mile. Let's just say Lake Martinez wasn't going to work, so I went down to Fisher's Landing, my third and last option. I've been to Fisher's Landing enough times, a lot of times. Those of you who've been down there know the cafe, they serve great burgers. But let's say that there's a reason why camping at Fisher's Landing is $5 a night. I ended up, you can see from the picture over here on the right, yep, you're right. So I just shoved my kayak to the side of the boat launch overnight, pitched my tent underneath the tamarisk tree about 1,000 feet away, came back early the next morning, and got treated again the way I like to paddle at sunrise. The water was glass. I had full reflections of the mountains south of Fisher's Landing, Lake Martinez, perfect reflections. It was great. I only saw a couple of power boats that busted out of the reeds. It was wonderful. Paddle down about 10 miles to Imperial. Paddle down to 10 miles of dam, which started the next section of the expedition. That was the start of what I call the day. 2 dams in 1 day, Imperial and Laguna. The next section, this is the final 25-mile push of the expedition. It's 5 miles between Imperial Dam and Laguna Dam, and between Laguna and Morelos is 20 miles. Now, launching from Parker Dam was an adventure. Launching from Imperial Dam just plain sucked. My support crew, being Frankie, Vicky, Hermes, my folks, came down, met me at Imperial Dam, and we drove around, and we actually had to go for the bridge about a half-mile down, and we had to walk the kayak across the bridge with the portage wheels, lower it down by ropes down this bank, and I launched right underneath that bridge right here on the picture on your right. And then paddled up as close as I could get, which is fairly close to Imperial Dam, and by this time, the river after each dam gets a little bit smaller. After Imperial Dam, it really ain't a river. I've had a lot of people over the last few months ask, what's it like, the Colorado River like south, over by Yuma? My answer is, go to a place with a bunch of farms, look for one of the biggest canals around, and paddle. It is only average 75 feet wide, sometimes it's only 25 feet wide, and the river was only about an inch, 2 feet deep. And I was actually going through when they were letting a lot of water in. So I actually got high water. High water. So punched it down the 5 miles to Laguna Dam, took out, that was it for the day. Now comes the final day, the final 20 of the expedition. And it was a ride, it was an emotional roller coaster. So this is Laguna Dam right here, the final dam on the lower Colorado River in the United States, or does it straddle the United States. That's a picture, the picture right there, there's an actor called River Bend, it's kind of my river handle. And I shot little pictures of myself in front of each dam. Like, hi, River Bandito. So, shot it down there, and paddled south. Apparently when I was going through there, it's duck hunting season. And the hunters, some hunters mistook me as a animal rights activist. And I actually had a couple of them shoot fireworks at me. I wasn't mad. I just, again, cynical. I just paddle on saying, dude, it ain't worth it. You've got a goal that decides that. It just ain't worth it. And also the point that, they had guns paddle. Punched it out, like that, got a little bit of flow, a little bit extra help from the confluence of the Gila River. Met my support crew over at Riverside Park in Yuma, which is only 8 miles north river miles north of Morelos Dam. Called the Border Patrol. I actually contacted the local office of the Border Patrol several weeks before the expedition and made arrangements with them to say, hey, this is what I'm doing, kayak coming in, and let them know I'm coming down. So they were very, very cool to deal with. They were honest. They're awesome, just say that. So that's for arrangements we made. I called the Border Patrol office, say I'll be in about 2.5 hours over in Morelos Dam, so they can lock the gates and my support crew can come over and pick me up. It's going to be hard to hitchhike back to Yuma home with a kayak. 8 miles from Morelos. The only challenge I had left was a rock weir about 1.5 miles, 2 miles north of Morelos Dam. It spreads the width of the river. I'd heard stories about it from locals and some of the Border Patrol agents saying, hey, it creates some rapids, there's a drop, it's white people out, you need to be careful with it, or you need to portage it. I'd never had a chance to scout it out before the start of the expedition. So I just figured, you know what, if I can take on 300 plus miles of river over 16, 17 days, I should be able to handle a rock weir. So I saw the rock weir, came up to it, and I kind of looked at it, and let's just say instinct came in, and this is the last 2 miles of the expedition.
God, I hope that had a video. I just went down that. That was a rush. That is the rock weir ride, 1 mile from Morelos Dam. What a rush. Oh, man, that was awesome. yelled something not pretty. Recovered. He didn't even barely smoke, but man, that was cool. I was thinking of portaging that sucker, but you said pick the V and just go for it. Oh, that was United States, Mexico. United States, Mexico. United States, Mexico. I am half a mile from Jerusalem. That's the United States, mostly. That's definitely Mexico. I can hear car alarms off in the background and water. I'm coming up on signs. I can't believe I've seen the finish line. Ladies and gentlemen, Morelos Dam. Morelos Dam. This part of Eastern Mexico, this part of Canada, this part of the United States. Make up my mind. River left. God bless America. Booyah. 340 miles, Colorado River.
Bringing the boat. Whatever the hell's going on back there to talk about the hollies.
In that final mile, and I'm actually having to pull back here a little bit because it's just, this is fresh every time I see it. In that last mile, after 2 weeks of power boats, wind, cold, more wind, more power boats, is generally, more cold, and seeing some of the greatest things I could see that grandfather could show me. I had one blast of wind 3 miles from the wet dam that pushed me around, and then after the rock weir, it truly was me and the river. The river let me have it. For that final mile, I owned it. It was me in the Colorado. When I look back and contemplate and want to do a very brief, like, half-paragraph summary of the trip, I look back at the video of the Crucible, and at the end of it, when I was on the Crucible, the river goes and does a departure to the south, and I knew what I would see. Calm water. And to summarize it, I summarized the end of the clip with the Crucible. I make the turn, and there's calm water. It's not a test. It's not a victory. It just is. And I'm amazed. For quick information, also in the Crucible, I said that that would not be my last river trip. This trip I did was also a charity for local council of Boy Scouts of America, where I have in Southern California, and what's called the Sherman Indian Fund, scholarships for Native American students for an off-reservation boarding school in Riverside. Hold on. Just went real quick. There's a round 2. I'm doing it again in November. This time I'm raising funds for Sherman Indian High School and Sherman Indian Fund and the Breast Cancer Research Foundation. For information, you can find it out. Riverbronx.com, it's my old paddling club website. I turned it into the expedition website. So it was cool. Now I guess we have Q&A now, right? Okay. I actually had, I actually had a food drop I kept with Desert River Kayak out of Wolfhead. And I had if I had, like I say, a 3 or 5 day section, I carried an extra day to 2 days worth of food. case of emergencies. And look at that guy, just had a streaker for life. It's a Ranger, that comes the lights. So, I had a food truck there, and my little brother lives in Parker, and he, I kept a food truck there, and from there I actually, it would take me 5 days, so I actually had 7 or 8 days worth of food for my Parker drop. Actually, no, I went out and I bought a dehydrator. I had 11 months to plan this, so I had a lot of time to experiment. I bought a dehydrator, and I had a lot of dehydrated food I had. Some dollar store stuff because it comes just the right size packets. And I became a good enough cook, because normally cooking's not my strong point, that I could make something tolerable with dollar store meals, like hamburger, mac and cheese, shepherd's pie, stuff like that. World Market, whenever they had a special, I did like salmon packets and little minis of summer sausage and cheeses and whatnot that could keep the trip. And that's how I did my food. And I kept in a couple of 5-liter dry bags. One reason I like to dehydrate is because it takes up 60% less room than regular hydrated, and freeze dried is expensive. It's salty also, and you get a lot of quality. There's a lot of quality control you can do with dehydrated foods. Any other questions? Or did we go right there? Okay. Any other questions? My map? Yeah, I had a lot of alternate plans. Yeah, one of the things I invested in was a satellite tracker, spout satellite tracker. And so, yeah, people were able to follow the website, follow where I was at, and they'll do my location for about every 10 minutes. I actually had people as far away as like Korea and Sweden sending me messages saying, hey, asking questions about this during the trip. But as far as maps, I had about 11 months to plan this. And I would spend whole evenings just looking at Google Earth. And looking at it and talking to questions. Helen got tired of me going, Helen, what about this section? And she was like, here we go again. And just filled her ear. Some most not phone calls would have had some Paddlefest, and she got tired of me. But anybody that knew her, I had emailed, I think it's Arizona Paddlers. They asked about like takeout points around Morelos or Imperial Laguna Dam to get their suggestions. And a lot of look at maps. I carried with me Fish and Go maps, because it has a lot of useful information on there, and it's waterproof map. So I used that, and there were some areas if I had to sit out overnight, like the sandbar, I would be there. And my support crew knew that I didn't have cell reception through a lot of it except T-Mobile. And support crew knew that if I could send them an OK message, a check-in message, but they knew that if I was running late, they knew to meet me down in Imperial Dam. Maybe the next day. They know I'd be running late for some reason. As far as alternate takeouts, like Cattail Cove, I already had arranged with my little brother that if something happened, the way I largely had it set up is that if I needed help or support from about around Bullhead, Needles or north, I had Helen to come over and pick me up. Desert River Drive was fabulous backup and assisting with the expedition. From around case I needed. I had a couple wilderness candles, like on that dirtbag kayakers campsite, with the little candle that was burning in a tin can. I had a couple wilderness candles to use in emergency situations. My camp stove, which is a little transient alcohol stove, and the transient cook set, that nestles really well. Emergency blanket, yeah, water. I usually carry about 5 gallons of water with me between my 2 drum areas. I added water purifier. I have a MSR Mini Microworks, but I don't want to really filter the water unless I have to because of the foam runoff. But it gets a lot of the particles through there. But the thing about the river is there's still a lot of pharmaceuticals there because of what people gas and yeah.
Pesticides.
Actually, I saw probably 1 million coos. There are several ducks. I saw a lot of herons. At one point, actually, Lake Mojave, which was really awesome, was we actually saw Terry and I and Helen got to play witness to a bald eagle? Bald eagle that flew around Butte, and then out came this crow zipping along, and the bald eagle chasing it. And that crow was doing maneuvers like a World War II fighter pilot to get away from that eagle. We're just going, wow, that is cool. So we saw a lot of wildlife. I mean, every morning I woke up, I heard south of Davis, I woke up to an owl hooting, or a couple owls hooting, and coots going off, many geese. We saw lots of herons, a couple of eagles, lots of burros off in the distance. Length of my boat's 17 foot. We close 17 mile by perception. Yeah, it's a real old kayak. I got to take a beating. Anything else, or?
I would have really liked to see you GoPro the rock weir.
So would I. I was looking at the rock weir, and I'm looking at the portage. I'm like, that stinks. And I just saw the bee were there because, like, you train for the Cal 100 going through the rapids, and I just saw the bee instinct kicked in, and I actually turned off the GoPro to kind of save some of the battery because the battery only lasts like an hour 15 minutes in the suckers. They're quick. They're battery hogs. And I went through, and when I went through the rapids, I just instinct kicked in and said, go for it. And went down. There's about a 2-foot drop there that I didn't really realize was there, and I'm like, whoops, not something not pretty. And went down, and the first thing I did was like, please tell me I did that. And I clicked it, and it goes beep. When it stops recording, it's beep beep beep. And I'm like, no. But and then when it started recording, I'm like, no. But that's when I said, oh my gosh, it went right down that. That's when it started recording after Rock Weir. Yeah, I really wish I had to. I was just like, yeah. Yeah, I got to do it now too, just so I get a copy of footage of me going down the Rock Weir again. That's why I do it.